Did Ripple just become a United States bank? Today, we're going to be talking about the biggest XRP catalyst in history, with the United States banking system becoming reliant on Ripple and blockchain technology. Whether it's XRP, XLM, HBAR, or dozens of other legitimate projects in the blockchain space, we're going to talk about how the United States is currently modernizing their payment system, and there isn't a better company or blockchain than Ripple and the XRP ledger. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Good Evening Crypto, your favorite crypto news related channel. If you enjoy this content, be sure to smash that like button and subscribe, as you're going to get an update every single day, 5:30 p.m. Eastern time. But we're going to start off with a video of our good friends Sal Gilberti and Paul Barron. I will be on the Paul Barron Network this Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern, so check that out, guys. They are talking about the possibility of Ripple and the XRP ledger replacing Swift over the next few years. And he agrees with something we've said for a very long time, Johnny Krypto. It starts with the regulation of this asset class in 2025. And we're going to let this play and discuss it. Here it is.
Biggest XRP catalyst that you think will happen? I mean, the banking license one, sure, for Ripple. Obviously, we've already seen quite a few, but there's also involvement in potentially a Swift movement in terms of cross-border payments. What would be your catalyst that you think would move the market?
I think those are both catalysts. I think that it's hard to say. If they get approved as a bank and then announce they're not going to sell any more XRP onto the market because they want to capitalize the bank, I think that would be an enormous impetus for price. That's gigantic. But then I think as Swift breaks down and ISO 222, I think that they're not projecting Swift to use it for a few years yet to be totally compliant with that. Whereas I think that when Ripple flips all the switches and all these NDAs they talk about come alive, and when you start seeing banks announce, we did this much on the blockchain ledger in terms of moving your money, and we did this much on Swift, and the Swift is going down and blockchain's going up, I think that's a big deal. And there's another point to be made here for the economy as a whole. Most people don't understand that banks have to keep capital in both places. If you want to send money from Miami to Tokyo, okay, banks have to have money in Tokyo and money in Miami under the current system. That all goes away. All that capital is going to be freed up with the blockchain. That's going to burnish the bank's balance sheets even more. But more so, they're going to be able to loan money. They're going to be able to finance their trading desks. It's going to open up so much capital to economic growth in general around the globe. It's a wonderful thing. The blockchain is literally going to open up value because it's going to unlock a lot of frozen money on the bank's balance sheets. And that's really important. Nobody seems to be talking about that.
Well, we're talking about it right here on Good Evening Crypto, guys. And if you agree with Sal Gilberti, smash that like button and leave a comment underneath the video. Now, Johnny, what did he talk about? The unlocking of utility and the unlocking of liquidity. And there's two tiers to this whole journey. There's first the onboarding of these technologies, and then there's the scaling of these technologies. And right now, I believe we're right at the beginning, right at the precipice of the onboarding phase for a lot of blockchain tech here inside the United States. And when you look at Ripple, what Ripple has already created here, 1,700 NDAs, 300 plus companies worldwide already operating with Ripple, over 12 central banks publicly working with Ripple. And we've talked about this for a very long time here on Good Evening Crypto, but you look at other news networks, they really aren't covering the tokenization of real world assets and what that's going to do for this entire asset class. But you heard what Gilberti focused on in this short clip. He said that Swift's days are numbered and there's going to be an onboarding process. That incumbent phase, that beginning where there's banks aren't fully onboarded, but they're starting to use this technology, that is a perfect opportunity for Ripple and their blockchain to slide into this asset class and change the way money and these markets function here inside the United States. But Johnny Krypto, floor is yours.
Abs, there's a massive change coming in. And I would actually take it a step further. I wouldn't even say they're onboarding yet. We're so early. We're still wrapping. They are just wrapping up what we call the proof of concept prototype testing stages. And that's all now coming to an end. I think banks are starting to realize that banks have been playing with this stuff for a while. And now they're getting ready, I think, to shift to that next phase, what you call onboarding. Maybe in the next year or so, we start to see that happening here. And Sal talked about it. We move first into that stage. And then eventually, what you mentioned earlier is the scaling stage. And that's when it gets really fun and exciting, because now all banks are coming on board. You see more shifting of money, as Sal rightfully pointed out, exactly what would happen. The shift, you'll see less transaction on the Swift system and more transactions starting to. And then you can just be like flip a switch, and one day it goes Swift is here and blockchain is here, and then boom. No, it's going to kind of just slide. Swift will come down. You'll see more and more value being added to the blockchain technologies. And what Sal was talking about, Abs, when he talked about needing to have money on the left and the right side, we call those nostro vostro accounts, which means I need to have money here and you need to have money there. It's actually an Italian word. So nostro's mine and yours, right? So yeah, exactly. So those two accounts, there's money sitting on both sides, that all of that liquidity gets freed up. And we have talked about that on this show, about when that money gets freed up, it all now goes onto the balance sheet of the banks. Now think about it. Banks are sitting on trillions of dollars, Abs, that they can't touch. And now all of a sudden, because of the blockchain, it unlocks that. How would you like it, Abs? You came home one day and you had a bunch of gold or money sitting in your house, but it's locked in a safe and you don't have the key. Well, what good is it, right? Well, what happens all of a sudden? Now you found the key. Now you can unlock that thing. That's what's going to happen. Now, what are you going to do? You're going to access that money and you're going to spend it. You're going to use it. You're going to put it into this economy. Why is that important? Well, because they're going to put it into these systems, into these technologies, and you're going to see all boats ride to high tides. And that's great for all investors. You're going to see blockchains increasing, stocks increasing. All these different things are going to go up because there's going to be so much. You know, we always talk about liquidity. That's going to be like a massive liquidity injection like you ain't seen before.
I completely agree, Johnny Krypto. And when you think about it, we've heard it before. High tide raises all boats. And Goldman Sachs expects the Fed to cut interest rates 3 times later on this year. You factor this in with a lot of the positive momentum we have in the crypto space. Well, risk-on assets are set to thrive here in 2025. And we're going to highlight that, guys. But if you're enjoying this content, smash that like button and subscribe to the brand new channel. Now, what else have we seen in just the last couple of months, Johnny? Ripple also filed to become a bank. And this gives them a strategic advantage in onboarding institutional clients, both onto the RLUSD stablecoin and into the product XRP on the XRP ledger. Sal Gilberti highlights how they are now not only going to have an incentive to expand the stablecoin, they're going to have an incentive to keep as much XRP as possible on their balance sheets because of how undervalued this asset is today. Here it is.
You know, what's Ripple going to do with its 40 billion XRP? Given that they filed to be a bank, you know, there's one of the leading theories that they just hold that on their balance sheet. They get their banking license and they become a top 20 capitalized bank in the world. That's with XRP at $3. XRP goes to, you know, some multiple of $3. They become a top 10 bank or even the top bank in terms of capitalization. That's pretty astounding.
You heard it here, guys. And I believe that Ripple has always had a plan to keep it a certain amount of XRP on their balance sheet. This escrow was a way to distribute the XRP into the most important people's hands. A lot of people have a misconception about what Ripple is doing with the escrow. They're not onboarding this XRP onto Coinbase and selling it to Johnny Krypto. They're going directly to Morgan Stanley and saying, we're going to give you a discount rate on 200 million units of XRP. Let's talk some business here. But what's your reaction to what Sal had to say?
Well, so to me, that's probably the biggest component of this whole thing that has me extremely excited. I don't think anybody understands how big this could be. If they become a bank, you have to understand, to be a bank, you have to have money to loan against. You have to have what's called collateral. Now, how do you do that? You go raise the money, or bank, you have the money. You have to find a way to get the money. Well, think about this, Abs. Ripple is in such a great position because they don't have to go out to the market and raise money or go collect, user deposits, right? That's another way banks get money, from users, right? And put on interest rate, you get money. And dude, think about this. They are starting out the gate. If they convert that 40 billion of escrow into collateral to start their bank, they're sitting on $120 billion. How nice would it be to start your bank? You don't have to go to the markets to figure out how to get it or loan out interest rates to go get that money. It's there. They already have it. It's genius. But here's the most exciting part. Not the part that they can become a bank and they've got collateral right out the gate. But if the collateral's XRP and you're sitting on $120 billion and you're like, I want to raise more money. Well, all you have to do is grow the value of XRP. You are now incentivized. The company Ripple, the bank Ripple, now has an incentive to want to grow XRP. Just as you and I do as holders, we want to see it go up, right? Well, Ripple, the company, maybe they need it, they don't need it. But if they're a bank and they're relying on that as a collateral, well, if they help pump that price from 3 to 10, Now they've got $1.4 trillion they're sitting on. Do you understand how significant? Why is that great for you and me? Because now we got a company that's going to bat for us that really has massive incentive to drive the price up. So to me, if it happens, oh, baby, put the seatbelt on because we're going to rocket ship out of here.
And they're already doing this, Johnny, with the acquisitions that we've seen here in 2025. They went out and acquired Rail, which is responsible for 10% of all B2B payments and stablecoins right now. And they acquired Hidden Road, which does $3 trillion annually. They're now going to be offering the RLUSD stablecoin here starting in 2025. My final point, I'll kick it right back to you. This is why I always talk about don't get too excited about short-term price action. Look at what Ripple is building. They are developing the modern banking system here inside the United States, and they've already set the standard for prime brokerages. Wait until one of the big 6 US banks starts onboarding Ripple products. It's an end game. All these other banks are going to be forced to adopt a blockchain product or lose their clients to someone who does.
Right. But it's different. The acquisitions you just mentioned are 2 additional use cases that they're trying to build to get companies outside of them to adopt the XRP technology, right? So what's exciting about this is now they've added a third one, which is their own internal use case for XRP. But now they'd be massively incentivized to grow it because the more they grow that, the more their bank grows, the more they can loan out, the more, the more money they make. So it's just another. That's why I love this senior management team. I've told you over and over again, love the team because they have a vision. And, Sal said something about 2 months ago. I don't know if anybody paid attention. He goes, I talked to those guys over there at Ripples. He goes, they're bankers. See, he knew they are very unique, Abs. They're not just a technology company. They are banker. Rosie Rios is there, for heaven's sakes, right? They know where they're trying to head with this thing. And so I could not agree with you more when you said something earlier in the show. People need to stop looking at the short-term pricing. Guys, I don't care if it's 333, 389, 256. Who gives a flying crap? What you need to care about is what Ab said. Look at what they're building. Understand where they're going. And we are trying to use these shows to help you understand where they're going. Guys, they're going to be not only are they going to be a massive technology company. Think of Amazon. Think of Google, right? They're going to be that. But in addition, add a plus sign. They're going to be a technology company plus a bank. We've never really had that before, Abs. That's what blockchain is bringing. We're seeing a whole new thing where companies want to borrow from Ripple. Like nobody does that. So this tells me we're seeing a transformation. The blockchain is going to bring something we've never seen. It's new to the world, where a technology company is also going to be a bank. Dude, can you imagine how big this company is going to be in the future and the technologies that they're driving? You cannot be more excited or feel like you're at least in a position to have generational wealth if you're holding on to XRP at 20 cents, 50 cents, even if you bought it at $3 someday, when it's sitting at 10, 20, 100, 200, 1,000, you're going to be sitting there going, wow, what a life-changing event. And it's all because you had the foresight to know where they're going.
Completely agree, Johnny. If you guys are enjoying this content, smash that like button and be sure to stick around to the end of the video because we're going to show you how Ripple onboards clients and what that could do for the 2026 XRP price chart. But I shared this tweet last week. I want to read it one more time for our listeners. We know what the end game is because it was shared on Twitter by one of Ripple's original employees in Bob Way. Over the next 12 months, we should see this come to fruition. Ripple will become a global bank with banking licenses in most major countries, with the RLUSD stablecoin in most major currencies, and it will all be run through the XRP ledger as a super global neobank. And that was put on Twitter. That is the end game for the XRP community, where we're not focused on 3, 6, 8, 12, 15, 25 bucks. Instead, we're looking at a market where if we know by the year 2030, banks are going to be using this technology. It's the journey that happens between now and then that leads me to believe we are still at the inception of this asset class, and the majority of money that will be made in this market is still sitting in front of us here in 2025. But I wanted to play a brief clip from Brad Garlinghouse talking about how they are not only in acquisition mode, Johnny, they have the intention of making further acquisitions here starting in the calendar year of 2025.
we have been in a very fortunate position to be able to grow the business organically. We're also, frankly, more proactive in looking at acquisitions. This is an industry that finally is going to be able to thrive in the United States, the largest economy in the world. And I think the industry is still underestimating the shift from the headwinds to the tailwinds. That's going to make a bigger difference than people think. And finally, the U.S. market is really unlocked.
So it sounds like what you're saying, acquisitions are almost more of a priority now than an IPO for you. So then what would you be looking for to buy, and how big are you willing to go?
Well, I'm not going to name names, but look, Ripple at its core is a blockchain infrastructure company. We sell our technologies to business, primarily financial institutions, and we'll look at other things that are blockchain infrastructure company.
There you have it, Johnny. And we already know right now, 12 central banks, 300 companies, 1,700 NDAs sitting between Ripple and some of the biggest financial players on planet Earth today. It's just one of a dozen reasons why I believe Ripple is going to be responsible when it comes to being at the forefront of bringing forth a modern age of settlement here inside the United States. But the title of today's episode is Ripple Just Became a U.S. Bank. We're going to start breaking that down right now, as the Gemini twins have just tapped Ripple for a credit line ahead of their United States IPO on the NASDAQ. The agreement will allow lending requests for up to $5 million each, initially allow an integration of up to $150 million. They may use the RL USD stablecoin. And I shared this quote earlier, Johnny Krypto, where I told you, name another time that a company that wasn't a bank was lending $150 million credit line to a company that was going public. You cannot find an example. And for this reason alone, Ripple is expanding their playbook. They're showing us what they're going to do with this balance sheet. And they're going to leverage, whether it's the 40 million XRP in the escrow, 40 billion, sorry, or it's the billions of dollars that they have in cash right now on their balance sheet. A report came out just a couple of months ago, $13 billion. They're making acquisitions of huge companies, $1 billion here, $200 million there. If they keep up at this rate, we could see Ripple go out and acquire a dozen companies and still have $5-6 billion sitting in cash, ready to leverage it out in manners like we're witnessing here. But our listeners probably haven't seen this yet. Gemini has filed for a NASDAQ IPO and is tapping Ripple for a $150 million credit line. Now, why is this even more important? I was going through the SEC document and look at the companies that are founders here and had to sign off on this agreement. Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, and Citigroup are the three big names that caught my attention right away, Johnny Krypto. So this highlights just how much the world is, it's already evolving, right? We aren't supposed to know about this stuff. It's only Twitter sleuths like Mikkel, like Zach Rector, like Coach JV, like we like to consider ourselves, the people, thousands of people who tune in and watch these programs. You are a very unique set of individuals, and that's why you're set to make historic amounts of wealth from the evolution of this asset class. I want to make one comment in regards to price, Johnny, because if you think about where we are today, we're in a cycle. Markets are going up. Bitcoin's breaking its all-time high. XRP's at $3. When things like this start becoming the norm, when we're looking at Ripple filing to become a U.S. bank, Ripple, 1,700 NDAs, ETFs set to be approved, lending protocols and credit lines and tokenized assets, all of it's happening right now. I think that when you zoom out, we all know a $3 XRP is undervalued. This was an asset that was trading at $3 back in 2018. I don't want to stray too far from the topic, but I think articles like this highlight even today, the company Ripple and the XRP asset are extremely undervalued as opposed to where they're going to be just 3, 4, 5 years from now.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, we're at the beginning of a massive market. We're at the beginning of what I think, or I call, two phases of growth, and there's a speculation phase, and then there's the utility and adoption phase. And they're usually separated apart by years. But the reality is you can make good money in both. And what we're seeing here, I have never, and now I'm not going to sit here and say I thoroughly exhausted or researched everything, but I've never heard of one company loaning another company, going to another company in asset. I mean, sure, if they're partner or sister companies, it might happen. But like, you're not going to see Microsoft go knock on Google's door and say, hey, I need to borrow $150 billion. It's just like, it doesn't happen. So to me, the fact that you're seeing them come to Ripple, of all companies in the world, they went to Ripple and asked them for a loan. Not Coinbase, which Coinbase also trying to be a bank. Not Kraken, also trying to be a bank. But not all the Wyoming banks trying to be crypto banks, but they went to Ripple. It tells you that they understand first of all what they're trying to do, understand the value of what the company can provide, and more importantly, For Ripple, it's great because it now puts them in a position where they can draw more demand and use of their stablecoin, right? Because if they end up loaning it in RLUSD, that's what I would do if I were them. I'm like, you want it? Yeah, here, you get it in our stablecoin.
One quick comment about this, Johnny, just adding to your point. Ripple filed to become a U.S. national bank in July of 2025. They're starting to make plays like this here in August. Wait until they get their license and it's full blown. We're going to lend to Morgan Stanley. We're going to lend to BlackRock. We're going to lend to anybody. We're going to expand our financial reach as far as possible. We may see Ripple, the company. I'm not talking about XRP Ledger for just a moment.
Right.
We may see the company Ripple become a $500 billion company over these next 3 or 4 years. Seriously.
Huge. I think whenever there's the ability to invest in Ripple, if you don't have an IPO or you're able to me, Ripple is definitely a company you want to invest in and own shares of them, the company, because it's very different than XRP, the technology. If you're new here, you probably don't know that, but if you're not, then you know XRP and Ripple are two different things. But that's why I'm excited, because while they're separate and Ripple, the company, will survive on its own, boy, if it's going to rely on XRP as a bank and that the collateral is going to be its XRP, then you could see why I'm so excited, because they're going to want to grow the value of their XRP. And they're also going to be more incentivized to drive use cases, because that's going to then provide value back to their collateral. But just again, to me, what's interesting is I'm starting to see something new here, a new trend we've never seen before, where you have a blockchain company, a technical company that's also going to be a bank. And I guess, well, fintech, right? But that this would truly be the definition of fintech, where you literally have a financial service, but it's also providing the technology of the bank. It's really, really fascinating. You don't really see that happen very often. So to me, this is what now they are going to be setting apps, a groundbreaking trend here. And it will be interesting to see how quickly companies like Coinbase and Kraken and all these other blockchain companies or exchanges want to follow and get some of that big piece of the pie that Ripple's going to be going after.
I agree with you, Johnny. And it's not just me and you who have this opinion. Sal Gilberti, once again, doubling down here. Here's 13 seconds of Sal.
You know, it's hard to say. If they get approved as a bank and then announce they're not going to sell any more XRP onto the market because they want to capitalize the bank, I think that would be an enormous impetus for price. That's gigantic.
And think about it, Johnny. If me and you are sitting here and thinking about how undervalued the asset XRP is, what do you think's happening in the Ripple boardroom? What do you think Monica Long is saying? What do you think David Schwartz is saying? What do you think Brad Garlinghouse is saying when he's talking about the true value of XRP? It's not $10. It's not $15. Even the average XRP investor understands the end game here. The end game is replacing a portion of SWIFT payments. The end game is modernizing U.S. settlement systems. The end game is the tokenization of real world assets and ETFs being promoted and pitched here inside the U.S. We're so far from that. It tells me that it's not a $10, $15, $100 asset. Dom and Phil from EZA predict $1,000. Jake Claver, $1,000. Mickle, triple digits. A lot of smart people in this space aren't talking about 10, 15, $20, because the reality is that if Ripple's vision comes to fruition, it's literally a once in a lifetime, once in a multi-generational opportunity. You have to be a little bit crazy to believe in something like that. And I put myself in that category. I am a believer. What do you think about Ripple, Johnny, holding that 40 billion and maybe even stopping the selling of the escrow at some point?
I mean, first of all, that's huge, right? Because people right now know that there's 100 billion tokens available on the market, or can be available. There's about 60 billion they released, 40 in escrow, and people are expecting that 40 to come. And what happens, Abs, is when that 40 comes, it dilutes the market, which means for all you guys out there who are holding your XRP, it can cut it in half by about 40%, okay? So why is that huge? Well, because that means right now, as the price could be going up, Ripple could be selling and driving it down, right? But if they now say, no, we're going to take this off the market because now we need it as collateral, we can't touch it no more. Guess what that means? Supply and demand, my friends. Now there's no more supply left to continue to add to it, to dilute it. Now it's just we all have to play with the 60 billion that's out there, which means the price goes up much, much faster and higher than it would if that 40 does become available and does get dumped on the market over time. It won't get dumped in one spot. You know, they'll dump $1 million here, whoever wants to buy it, right? So that is huge. I mean, you will see me get super excited, Abs. And not only that, I actually think that would actually be a driver. That alone would probably drive the price up a bit because market, remember, the markets like to move ahead of stuff. So if the market thinks that they're going to be never putting that supply into the market, that could drive the price up as well. So big things on horizon in terms of what they can do to be able to drive price up. So many catalysts to drive it up. But
let me name them real quick, Johnny, because think about this. I want to highlight, guys, if you're enjoying this content, smash that like button. It does really help us out on this channel. Now, Johnny, one of the things that I've said for a long time is that this fall is looking like the perfect storm. And there's a lot of different catalysts that I'm going to say in just the next 30 seconds here. We've got ETFs coming in October. We've got the regulation of this market happening with the Clarity Act. We've got the Fed set to reduce rates in September. We've also got the fact that when these ETFs are approved, we are going to see Wall Street start selling these products to their clients. We've never seen that before. Right. And the 4-year cycle, historically, it's rally in July and August, short correction in September, rally in October, market euphoria in November and December. If that happens again, we are going to look at an XRP price chart that starts that journey at $3. Let me repeat that again. We start this journey at $3. If we're headed into euphoria, Johnny, just talking about the market, just talking about the price charts, not all the different catalysts that I outlined and what that could really mean, we're going to see a double-digit XRP based on the momentum for what typically happens during these alt seasons and where we're starting off today. It's very likely we hit a 4.236, $9 minimum, could be as high as $12 depending on the time frames that you're looking at. That seems to be a minimum for me when I'm looking at how high we could get during this bull market. And I was having a little bit of fun on the Merlin application earlier today, testing out some of these price targets. And guys, if you do not have a plan for this crypto bull market, click on the link below. Absolutely try this app out, 30 days completely free. And what we allow you to do, connect your Ledger, connect your Coinbase, connect any device that you have crypto on. We allow you to create an exit plan and track it all in one location. Now, I want to remind you, 30 days completely free. You're going to get tax estimates and all these different fun tools that you can use. But here's the reality of why I love Merlin. It lets me go into the app, Johnny, change the exit plan accordingly, have a little bit of fun. Now, earlier I changed it to 589. Let's say I think I'm going to take 30% target at 5, 30% target at 10, and my last one will be $50. Let's have some fun with it, right? What that does for your portfolio is it allows you to fully understand what the value will be at specific price targets when we go into this euphoria. And XRP goes from $3 to $6 to $8 to $12. It is the people who know what they're going to do who will be most successful. And I think if you don't lock in that profit, the data tells us we're going to be overvalued, but it also tells us on the back end, we are going to be undervalued. And the last thing I'd like to say, if you're a person who's holding for the next 10 years, that is also a great plan. If your plan is to stomach the volatility, that's a great plan. That just means you're going to have to ride this journey a little bit longer, but it's one of the #1 ways to be successful. It's not timing the market. It's not buying the bottom and selling the top. It's time in this market. Sitting in crypto 3, 4, 5, 7 years, there's almost nobody who held Bitcoin for 5, 6, 7 years that hasn't quadrupled their money. Let me give you a data point that proves this. 10 years ago to the day, Bitcoin was $258. We're trading at 115,000 on a pullback this morning. Play these markets, use it to your advantage. Tune into programs like ours so you have a strategy to be successful. But Johnny Krypto, let's close it out with this. 19 different XRP ETF applications sitting at the SEC. We're going to see an influx of capital like many people are underestimating. I think that is going to be used as a catalyst to trick people into thinking this market's never going to come down. That I'm just going to say it how it is. I think that the mainstream media is going to use positive headlines to trick retail investors into buying assets that are way overvalued by the time it gets to be October, November, December. That's not where we are today. Floor is yours, Johnny, on what you're anticipating for this fall.
You know, Abs, I couldn't agree with you more. In terms of when we think about where we're headed, there are so many catalysts coming this fall. I personally feel exactly the same way, that it's setting us up for a potential massive bull run coming. And so when you think of the catalyst, you know, I've been very, very bullish on one particular one that I've actually called the linchpin. And that, I know you know what it is, but I'll say it for our audience, the Clarity Act, right? To me, I cannot repeat this enough over and over again that I feel like we were back in 96, 97, when the Telecom Act was the linchpin that set off the internet boom. And I got a great chart. I'm going to have to show it to you another time because I don't have it pulled up right now. But the point being is you're going to see we had a massive run because of these catalysts. And I believe the Clarity Act, coupled with all the other things you said in fall, just sets like super, like you hear people talk about the 4.26 extension. All right. Yep. That is around $8, $9. But you've also heard of something called a super cycle. Well, if you get enough catalyst apps, I believe, and kind of in the same camp with you, that if again, these things need to happen all in that same time period. But if they do, I think we hit a super cycle. Now you're talking much, much higher. I've looked at, 8.6 extensions and you're in the $15 to $20 range. So when you said double digits, I don't think that's inconceivable that we couldn't get there if all these things happen at the same time. So I'm excited about it. Now, the key is I don't have any expectations. I'm not going to sit there and say, oh, I know they're going to happen. No, guys, just sit back and wait and see what happens. And as each one comes, you can then decide, hey, do I want to take a lot out or a little bit? If, here's one way to play the game, Abs. If only 2 of those 5 catalysts come, you may want to take a little less profit, but you still take some. But if 5 out of 6 of those come, then you're like, oh, I'm going to take a lot more out. That's how I'm playing the game. I just told you guys my plan. I'm looking to see how many of these catalysts come because I understand each catalyst is going to bring new liquidity into the market.
Very true, guys. And this is what the All In podcast had to say. This is Paul Barron discussing what's the end game for XRP.
You see people getting kind of backlash in regards to some of the outlandish or what seems outlandish price predictions that people throw around for XRP. The truth of the matter is, we don't know how big this monster is going to be.
That's exactly right.
If it achieves the goals that it's set out to do, and there's every sign from the likes of the president just there that's going to be the case, people are way underestimating just the size of XRP because it's going to need that liquidity to enable all of this. It's an amazing time to be alive and in the crypto space.
There you have it, Johnny Krypto. So, guys, I'd love to hear, do you agree? We are bound to hit double digits in the calendar year of 2025. Comment that in the live chat. We appreciate you guys. Smash that like button if you enjoyed this content, and we'll see you all in the next one.
Good night.